The day I saw her. It was a hot Wednesday afternoon. I'd just finished a virtual meeting with my tech team when I heard the sound of water splashing outside. Curious, I walked to my window, and that's when I saw her. Precious was at the water tank filling her bucket. She wore a red short skirt and a white sleeveless top, her long natural hair tied up in a bun to keep it from falling into her face as she bent over the tank. The afternoon sun kissed her fair skin, making her glow. My heart skipped a beat, but not just because of her beauty. The scene before me transported me 6 weeks back to my last day with Angela. She too had been fetching water when she told me about him, the other man. "Mike, we need to talk," she had said, putting down her bucket. "I've met someone else." I shook my head, trying to clear the painful memory, but watching Precious, I couldn't help but notice how different she was from Angela. Where Angela's movements had been harsh and hurried, Precious moved with natural grace. Her red lips curved into a gentle smile as she hummed a local tune, completely lost in her simple task. The bucket was getting full, and I watched as she tried to lift it. It seemed too heavy for her slim frame. Before I could think twice, I found myself walking out of my apartment. "Let me help you with that," I offered, reaching for the bucket. Precious turned, surprised. A few drops of water had splashed on her face and she wiped them away, leaving a slight smudge of red lipstick on her hand. "Thank you, Mike," she said softly, "but you don't have to." "I want to," I replied, lifting the bucket. "Which way?" She pointed toward their section of the compound, and we walked in comfortable silence. I could smell her sweet perfume mixed with the fresh scent of water. It was nothing like Angela's overpowering designer fragrances. "You seem lost in thought," Precious observed as we reached their door. I set down the bucket carefully. "Just remembering something," I said, trying to smile. "Something or someone?" she asked, her intelligent eyes seeing right through me. For a moment I just stood there, struck by her perceptiveness. Before I could respond, her mother's voice called from inside. "Precious, is that the water?" "Yes, Mama." "Mike helped me carry it," she called back. "Oh, thank you, Mike," her mother's warm voice responded. "Come in and have some fruit." I politely declined, needing space to process the emotions swirling inside me. As I walked back to my apartment, I realized something. Watching Precious hadn't brought pain like every other reminder of Angela did. Instead, it felt like watching the sun break through clouds after a long rain. That evening, as I sat coding on my laptop, my mind kept drifting back to the water tank scene. For the first time in 6 weeks, thoughts of Angela were overshadowed by something else. The way Precious's eyes crinkled when she smiled, how gracefully she moved, the gentle kindness in her voice. Little did I know that this simple moment at the water tank was the beginning of something beautiful. Sometimes healing comes not when we're looking for it, but when we're simply helping someone carry their bucket. A growing connection. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the scene at the water tank. Around 2 a.m, I decided to get some fresh air on my small balcony. To my surprise, I saw a light on in Precious's window. She was sitting at her desk, probably working late. As if feeling my gaze, she looked up. Our eyes met across the compound and she gave a small wave. I waved back and she pointed to her phone, then held up a finger as if asking me to wait. Moments later, my phone buzzed. "Can't sleep," her text read. "Number you." "Too much work. Bank reports due tomorrow." I smiled at my phone. "Want some company? I have coffee." 5 minutes later, we were sitting on the compound's small garden bench. Precious had thrown a wrapper over her nightgown, and even without her usual red lipstick, her natural beauty shone in the moonlight. "So, who broke your heart?" she asked directly, taking a sip of coffee. The question caught me off guard. Is it that obvious? Nobody moves to a new place and buries themselves in work unless they're running from something or someone. I told her about Angela, surprised at how easily the words flowed. Precious listened without interrupting, her presence somehow making the pain feel distant, like an old movie I'd watched rather than my own story. "Her loss," she said simply when I finished. Then she smiled. "But thank you." "For what?" "For being honest. Most guys would try to act tough." We talked until the sun began to rise, about everything and nothing. Her job at the bank, my tech projects, our families. Her father came out for his morning prayers and simply nodded at us with an understanding smile. Over the next few days, our late-night talks became a routine. Sometimes we'd discuss serious things, other times we'd just share funny memes and laugh. Her father would occasionally join us, sharing wisdom about life and love that I now treasure. Then came that tragic Tuesday. I was on a video call when I heard the screams. Precious's mother was collapsed on the ground, someone from the hospital on the phone. Her father had been hit by a car. By the time we got to the hospital, he was gone. Everything changed after that. The compound fell silent. No more morning prayers, no more fatherly advice. Precious stopped wearing her red lipstick, and her short skirts were replaced by somber, long dresses. But in those dark days, our late-night talks became her anchor. "Tell me a happy story about him," she'd ask, and I'd remind her of how her father caught us laughing at 3 a.m. and instead of scolding us, brought out his special mint tea. One night, about 2 weeks after the funeral, she looked at me differently. "You know what's strange?" she said softly. "Dad told me something the day you moved in. He said, that young man has sad eyes but a good heart. Sometimes God brings the right people into our lives at the right time." She reached for my hand and I felt my heart race. But before anything could happen, guilt washed over me. Was I taking advantage of her grief? Was it too soon? I pulled away, made an excuse about work and rushed back to my apartment. That's when things got complicated. Because running away from Angela had been easy, but running away from Precious, that was breaking my heart all over again. When hearts speak. For a week, I became a master at avoiding Precious. I'd wait until I heard her leave for work before stepping out. I stopped sitting on my balcony. I even changed my jogging time. But living in the same compound, our paths had to cross eventually. It happened on a rainy Sunday evening. The power had gone out and I needed to turn on the compound's generator. As I walked to the generator house, I saw her there, struggling with the starter rope in the dim light. "Let me help," I said, moving forward. "I can manage," she replied coldly, but her hands were shaking. "Precious. No, Mike, you don't get to disappear for a week and then act concerned." She turned to face me, and even in the darkness I could see tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. "Do you know how much it hurts? First I lose my father, then I lose my friend too." Her words hit me hard. "I'm sorry, I thought it wasn't right. You're grieving and I—" "Stop deciding for me," she shouted, surprising us both. "Stop deciding what I'm feeling or what I should feel. You're just like Angela, making choices about other people's hearts." The comparison to Angela stunned me. She was right. In trying not to hurt her, I was doing exactly what had hurt me, making decisions about someone else's feelings. "The night Dad died," she continued softly, "you held my hand and promised you wouldn't leave, but you did. I was afraid," I admitted. "Afraid that what I'm feeling is wrong, that it's too soon, that people would talk." "People will always talk," came a voice behind us. We turned to see Precious's mother standing there with a lantern. They talked when I married her father too. He was too old for me, they said. But 30 years later, we proved them wrong. She walked closer, her wise eyes shifting between us. "My husband knew, you know. He told me. That young man will heal our daughter's heart when I'm gone." I didn't understand then. I do now. "Mama," Precious whispered. "Grief and love can exist together, children. One doesn't disrespect the other." She handed me the lantern and walked away, leaving us in a pool of soft light. Precious looked at me, her face gentle in the lantern's glow. She'd started wearing her red lipstick again, I noticed. "I miss him so much," she said. "I know." I reached for her hand. This time, I didn't let go. "Will you stop running?" "Yes," I promised. "No more running." The generator forgotten. We stood in the rain, letting it wash away our fears. Sometimes love comes quietly, like a friend holding your hand through grief. Sometimes it comes loudly, like truth spoken in the rain. But when it's real, it comes exactly when your heart needs it most. As we walked back to the house, hand in hand, I thought about how I came to Zik Avenue running from love, only to find it waiting here all along. Maybe that's what her father knew. Sometimes our breaks turn into our beginnings, and somewhere, I'm sure, he was smiling.